We heard earlier today about sketching and how awesome it is, and I wanted to share a little bit about why all of you should sketch and why it's a good idea and why sketching is easy in 5 minutes. So here we go. Sketching, it's not drawing. It doesn't matter if you don't know how to draw. Sketching is something like very, very different. Sketching is a tool. It serves a purpose. It helps you figure things out, right, about visual things. Drawing is art. Art doesn't need to serve any purpose except to make you feel things, and that's fine. But this isn't about art. This is about sketching as like a tool that you use as part of your job to make things. So if you can't draw, it doesn't really matter at all. It doesn't apply. Sketching is for your visual ideas, what drafts are for writing. And unless you're a fantastic writer, and even then, like even if you're Hemingway, I bet you Hemingway did a lot of drafts. Everyone uses drafts when you're writing. You cannot write well without drafts. You cannot share visual ideas. You cannot even make visual ideas and make them really well without doing drafts, without doing sketches. And in our brains, we actually have two separate systems, like subsystems for imagining how things could be versus how they actually really look. Like we actually have two different. So if you're not getting your like visual ideas out of your imagination onto like paper and bringing them back in through your eyes, you're not even using all of your brain, let alone anyone else's brain. Because talking to other people, like, I want there to be a button, and I want it to be blue, and it should be like over here. There's no way you're going to get to them understanding the same picture that you have in your head, or not nearly as efficiently as sketching. So what should sketches be, right? They should be cheap. You should feel like no guilt to throw them away. And you should be able to do a lot of them. And in order to do a lot of them, they need to be fast. You need to be able to make them really, really quickly. Because otherwise you're never going to be able to try enough different things and explore a lot of different ideas. And they should be ugly. Like, it's okay. It's not just okay. It's necessary for them to be ugly. They should communicate the fact that they're sketches, that they're unfinished, right? Nobody should look at a sketch and be like, yeah, this could be ready next Tuesday. No, never. Like, it should never be that way. So when you're designing a product, you have this funnel where you start with like a lot of different ideas, and then slowly you like iterate your way, and you get closer and closer to like one idea that you're going to spend more time and more like invest more into. And in the beginning, it's like more about ideas, and later you're polishing ideas and making them usable. And sketches are perfect for the early part of the funnel, right? You're exploring ideas. Later on, you pull the trigger of the prototype gun when you've like picked an idea that you've like decided that is probably going to be good, and now you want to do the more expensive work of prototyping. Like sketches help you make sure that you spend your time prototyping the things that are likely to pay off, right? So you don't waste your time. So it's very much a resolution versus time trade-off. So what do you need in order to sketch? You need paper, right? You need pens, right? And you need a wall. Why do you need a wall, right? We're really good at drawing visual connections between things in terms of how our system of vision works. And you need to be able to put up all of your ideas in one place where you can sort of look at it all, and particularly stand next to people that you're working with and look at it all together and say like, that and that, like that's good and that's pretty good, and if we put them together, maybe it would be better, right? You're not going to be able to draw those connections without seeing it all like laid out in front of you. So it could be on a table, but a wall is good because you walk by it and you notice it and like, oh, okay. Oops. How to sketch in like 1 minute. You need to be able to draw lines, okay? How do you draw like lines? There's thin lines, there's like scratchy lines, like double lines, there's like squiggly lines. You can all draw lines. You need to be able to draw boxes, and that's it. This is all you need in order to sketch. Okay, everyone can do it. You want to approximate like the visual properties of the thing that like how you want it to look. So if it's like a headline, just like draw some squiggly lines that look like they would look if they were a headline. If it's body text, then draw some straight lines. Make the last one a little bit shorter. It looks a little bit like a paragraph. Bam, you're done. You can even do like, draw the same lines and then fill in the first two, and that looks like a header and a little bit of text after it. Like, bam, you're done. We've communicated something. If it's an image, the convention is draw an X through the box. Okay? Don't actually draw the image. Sometimes you have things that are iconic, like calendars or avatars. Draw something that kind of looks like it, but it doesn't need to be perfect. And this is Gmail. This is how a sketch should look. This ugly, this fast. This took me a minute to sketch, and all of you can do it. And you should use it. I use it a lot, and My time is literally up. Bye.
I've never given a lightning talk before, so this is terrifying, but I'm going to do it again. I was just wanting to talk about writing error messages that don't suck, because they're important. Users hit them and become frustrated, and it's a point actually where you can really make their lives easier, and you can really make a difference to the usability of something. So the key is simple. Focus on users and what they actually need. One of the worst error messages I've come across is in Outlook, where it says, the operation was not successful. Okay. Why did you bother? So I think basically there are three elements that you need to consider. What's gone wrong and why, what the consequences of that are, and what can the user actually do about it. And again, what does the user need? If one of those isn't relevant, then just don't put it in. So for the first one, what's gone wrong and why, there are two extremes. You can have an error has occurred, don't bother. Or you can have a full stack trace where actually sometimes that's just not going to help the user. So what you're looking for is what's actually going to help speak their language, work out what is the thing that they understand. Number two, what do they need to know? What the consequences are, what do they need to know about that? If they've lost data that's important, you need to tell them. If it's just something's gone wrong and you need to retry, then you don't actually need to give too much information if retrying is easy. So yeah, number three, what can they do to fix it? If it's not possible, then you're just going to have to not mention it, something's failed. If they need to retry, tell them. I think I saw one this morning that was, an error has occurred, please investigate. Again, don't bother. If there's a long explanation, if it's a dialog box, actually just link to the docs. Don't try to explain it all there, because there's not, don't waste people's time. They're already angry and frustrated because something's gone wrong. One last thing is tone, which we've talked a lot about so far. I think MailChimp's voice and tone guide actually gets it really right here. This isn't the time to be chatty, and you have to think about what the situation is. So maybe you're writing a message for someone's tried to open something and it doesn't exist, and you might want to say, no data here, lol. And actually, if someone's trying to find something they've lost, that's really not going to help. So yeah, don't be chatty, don't make jokes, it's going to be irritating. But you don't need to be really formal, because actually that's quite intimidating, especially if something not too bad's gone wrong. So you're saying something is forbidden is terrifying. Saying couldn't get access is much more straightforward, to the point, and it's not so scary. So words like immediately, danger, alert, warning. If there's something that seriously has gone wrong or might go wrong, then tell them and those are appropriate, but make sure you're not being scary if you don't need to be. Basically be polite, informative, calm. Imagine your user in this situation, how they've got there. You're helping someone who is confused or angry or frustrated, so don't make their lives more difficult. And one last thing, in general, don't apologize, because it doesn't actually add anything. If you genuinely screwed up, then do, but otherwise, again, don't waste people's time. So.
Hi, I'm Benoit Briand, and I'm about to talk about Diacutter, which is a software. First, I'm a developer, so I try to commit into testing documentation and automating tedious tasks, and Diacutter is about automation. The story, as an example, you can use Diacutter to start a new Sphinx documentation. When you start a Sphinx documentation, you usually use a Sphinx quick start, which is a command provided by Sphinx. It generates some configuration and tools in the make file, and then you have to manually add content. Personally, I like adding content like alternatives, or the vision of the project, or contribution guidelines. I put it in every documentation I write. But I work in several projects, and in every project I contribute to, I create or contribute to new documentation. I mean, for every project, so I do it often. So I'm a developer, so I automated it, set up by with a template. It's a simple template where you have a placeholder, with a simple example. And then I set up a user interface. Here is a user interface in HTML. So I put it online. I put the template online, and with Dicutter, which is a service, I just click, and get the generated files. So it's really easy. How does it work? Dicutter server side, Dicutter manages the templates. There are resources. You just, as a user, you post data to the Dicutter server. Dicutter fetches the templates, or you can read the templates from GitHub as an example, and it renders the files and gives them back to you. You can use it not only for things, you can use it for everything. You can copy, paste, adapt, Python project, or Opera extension, or make docs documentation, anything. In documentation, think of it about when you use it, often have things like here is an example. You can copy this example and change some values. With Dicutter, you can put a HTML form in your documentation, and as the user can just click and get the files. The idea behind Dicutter is that you focus on valuable things that you do. I mean, you do the templates, you do the user interface with optionally, if you want, you can do validation with JavaScript, or design with CSS. And the user focuses on the content, the data he submits, and Dicutter takes the data, the template, renders the template, and you get the files. Today, Dicutter just works. It has nice features. It uses some Jinja template engine or something like that. Or the idea is that it's open source, so you can use Dicutter.io to use the server online, or you can download and install your own server. What's important is that I am a developer of Dicutter, and I'm working on it. Today, the documentation, as an example, is quite it can be improved. So I'm working on it, and later we will have templates like Django, Ruby, any template system, and we can read template for GitHub, Bitbucket, or anywhere. So if you want to talk, it's finished. Thank you.
Baptiste, I like the bagpipes. So.
Nice.
So I learned the bagpipes like 4 years ago. It said that we have like 7 years to become a bagpiper. But yeah, anyway, so at that time I was very bored. So I liked the bagpipes, and I wanted to learn it. So I bought a method. Okay, but I was quite struggling with it, and we don't speak about it so much. But I had a great resource for like documentation for learning things. It's YouTube videos, and from this resource I improved quite good. And another thing, which is quite more or less related to documentation, that's for the scores. There's some program for writing scores for bagpipes, and mainly exe files for Windows. I don't have Windows, so I wanted to look for something else. And of course, I found Lily Pond, if you know it, the cousin of LaTeX. It was quite hard, but thanks to open source community, there was another bagpipers, which is very geek, and write some functions, some helpers for writing scores, so it really helped it. I don't really like to talk. Do you want to hear some? Tune it a bit.
Slides. I don't like people not to look at me. I'm going to talk about, I work for a company called Tagged, and I want to talk a little bit about how we've structured technical documentation and communication in general, because we're working in a really fun circumstance. I think from Twitter it's the same situation. We've got 80 plus or minus 5 developers and 1.25 documenters. And that poses some fun challenges. When I was originally brought on, they brought me on as a contractor, and they basically said, hey, can you document everything? And so I went into this sort of like technical ethnography mode, where I was looking through old pieces of code and trying to find the people who were no longer there to explain it, etc. And that wasn't working. We tried that, it didn't work. So then we tried just, they had me instead interviewing the people who were leaving, right? So we figured that the people who were still there, we could consult them if we needed some information about what they did. And so basically I became the angel of death. I would, as people were walking out the door, I would walk up to them and I would say, hey, I need to know everything you ever did. And we had some intelligent ways of doing this. I would pull the code repository, I would look at all of the stuff they had done, and I would see if other people had contributed significantly to it after the fact, right? Because if that's the case, then other people understand it. I don't need to get that information. But even then, like I remember there were 8 weeks in a row where there were 16 people leaving, and I got a bunch of notes, but I was never able to write anything. So we came on a new approach, which I think is a lot more useful. They took me out of a writing role altogether, which my co-technical writer might argue is the best thing possible. She is amazing with grammar. And instead what I end up doing is I build documentation culture, if that makes sense. I try to empower developers to do their own documentation. Other people have mentioned this before, because they know what it is. And we have an internal wiki. We use Confluence, Atlassian Confluence. And a lot of developers prefer to write in GitHub. And so we have Google Search Appliance that unifies everything. And all I care about is... Yeah, that happened, by the way. I just want to remind you all that that actually did happen. So instead what I do is I walk around, I level people up. I also do all of the new hire trainings, right? I go in there so I can kind of get to the people before they've even started. And I act like everyone uses the wiki, when not everyone uses the wiki. And not only that, I ask them to email me. I say, I'm Nick at Tagged. Email me if you have any questions. I sit in the back by the window. Head towards the light if you want to find an answer to anything. And I don't care what your question is, because once I get the answer to that once I get the question, I know what we need to document. And then we have my cohort, who is, she's only there 1 day a week. She works from home typically. And she's like our SWAT team. Like when we have a special project, I'll go in and I'll sort of design how we're going to approach it, but then she's the one who goes in and does the in-depth documenting. And this approach is, well, it's not ideal, right? Because you don't end up with beautiful documents, which I love doing. You do end up with nouns and verbs, and if your developers are just desperate to get the information, because all of this is internal, they're willing to like struggle through something that's poorly written because they're just trying to get the context. So that's our approach. That's it. I think it's kind of novel. I don't know. We'll see how it works out. I'll give you an update next year, I suppose. That's it.
I was just going to briefly talk about how we use Confluence to we do conditional content and versioning in Confluence, since of course we use Confluence. There was the really great Ditta Lighting talk yesterday that talked about Ditta and how it lets you do conditional content, so you can single source all your content and then publish it for, say, OS-specific documentation. So we have the same requirements in Confluence. We have a product that we install behind the firewall for customers. They can download and install. We also have a cloud-based product that's basically the same but has a few limitations. So we need those. We need that functionality as well. But we don't have the XML in the back end to structure it and a content management system to publish it. So this isn't meant to be a sales pitch at all. I just wanted to explain that if you want the advantages of using a wiki, it's still possible to have to control your content and do cool things with it. I imagine that Confluence isn't the only wiki that you can do these types of things with. If you use a wiki that has a publicly accessible API, you can probably structure it to do the same stuff. So this is a page in our in Confluence. This is our live site, so I really hope I don't F it up. You can see the gray here. This is indicating that we have conditions on this content. So we have variants that apply attributes to say what situations this content is applicable for. So if you look at the source, you can see we use this macro called conditional content that's supplied by the third-party plugin that we use. And you can see that here you can pick what scenarios this content is available in. The other thing that we do, we have requirements to versions. So we're a pretty agile shop. We ship new features every 2 weeks. And some of our products are rapidly moving to a continuous deployment model where developers can check into master and prod within an hour. So we have to get pretty good at versioning our content, which is typically pretty difficult in a wiki. So we have this plugin that we use also lets us version, so we can pretty much mimic feature branches in the content and then publish from a specific version, merge back into the main branch later. Yep, that's pretty much it. Just wanted to quickly run through. If you're interested, don't shy away from using a wiki. Like if you want people to comment or developers to write, don't shy away from using a wiki just because you need to manage versions or do conditional content.
Oh, so I'm Jessie again, and I'm going to talk to you, hopefully. Oh, this is a theme. So, I'm going to talk to you about learning to program. And so I started teaching myself to program about a year ago, and very, very quickly realized that I was not using the clicker thing. I got myself back to the exact same dog in a panic, not knowing what I'm doing macro from my last talk. So decided, oh, I'm gonna learn to program. And that's kind of open-ended, where you're like, oh, I'll learn to program. Oh. So I'm really into data, and what I did when I decided I would learn to program is I went to coworkers, I went to friends, I went to people in the industry, and I did a bunch of interviews on what language they recommend beginners learn. And I wound up with this. And this is not helpful, this is terrible. When you ask people what language you should learn, what you really get is the answer to what language they love. Oh God, you can only do Ruby. Ruby is the only thing that matters. No, 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 no. I got Perl recommended as a first language. Just lots of, CSS, which I don't think is a programming language, really. But I got all of this input and it was all useless. It was really not helpful. And really what turned out to be helpful, what turned out to be helpful was the very first advice I got. The first person I asked what language I should learn said, you need to pick the language you have the most support for. If you've got people in your environment who are doing Java, do Java. Except for Perl, don't do Perl. And you get to this stage where you don't know what you're doing, and it's okay. I think lots of learners have a really bad case of imposter syndrome, and I think none of us realize that everyone has that. Professional programmers who are doing it their whole lives, they're here. They have no idea what's going on, and they're really fine with it. And I've put my contact details up again and again and again, firstly because I'm vain, but secondly because I'm working on developing community resources for people learning to program. So hopefully I've put this up enough where you guys have added me on Twitter and I can start bullying you for help. So if anybody does workshops, outreach, educational stuff, get in touch with me. I'd be really happy to help set up a community event. That's it.